Well, hello and welcome everyone to our session on meaningful transformation through effective app modernisation. Are you ready to talk all things app modernisation? We'll be discussing strategies, tips for the best transformation and a few gotchas to watch out for, all brought to life through real life examples. And to help us, we have Mehdi Khalili, Head of Services Technology Strategy at Telstra Purple, and from Microsoft, Dean Corcoran, the Chief Technology Officer for Partners. Thanks so much for joining me today, guys. Great to have you here. This is an interactive session. You've got two of the brightest minds in the field ready to answer your questions. So hit the Live Now button and fire those questions away. Ask us anything along the way. We'll dive into the Q&A session at the end. And if we don't get time to get to your question, it will be answered personally at a later time. Let's start with you, Mehdi. Kick things off. What are the key strategies for app mod, as they call it?
Yeah, Adam, you've got 6 strategies. So you've got rehost, replatform, redesign, rebuild, and then you've got replace and retire.
They all begin with the letter R, I note.
Call them 6 Rs. Yeah.
Take me through the 6 Rs. What have we got?
So rehost is basically your lift and shift. I know it's a bit of a maybe dirty word, but it's actually a really good technique when you're dealing with a whole of business transformation. So you migrate all of your applications to a secure landing zone, and that allows you to then more easily and gradually modernize your applications one at a time. The great thing about rehost is that it's very quick, and you don't have to make a lot of changes, or in some cases, not many changes to your apps. The challenge with rehost is that it could cost a lot of money to keep your applications on infrastructure as a service, for example. And that's where replatform comes in. You basically change the underlying platform for your application from something like IaaS, or if you've got them on-premise data center, to use cloud services more natively, typically on platform as a service, also known as PaaS, or function as a service. The great thing about replatforming is that it allows you to make changes really quickly with minor changes to your application and take advantage of cloud services natively. But even then, there may be challenges that you have in your application, like the scalability challenges or security challenges, which cannot be fixed with replatform because you've got some underlying architectural issues with your app. And that's where redesign comes in. You redesign part of your application to fix some of these challenges. It might be security, maintainability, or scalability challenges, or whatever challenge that you've identified in your business. That works really well when the underlying technology that you're using is a solid technology. If you're using an old technology, there is no point investing a lot of time and effort into redesigning it. And that's where rebuild comes in, where you build your application from the ground up. The last 2 strategies, retire is when the application is no longer serving your business and you retire it, or it's not core to how you operate, like a CRM, and in that case, you're better off going with an off-the-shelf solution.
So replace and retire are really when you take those beautiful old applications and send them off to the farm. But let me ask you, in the work that you're doing with your clients, what are the most common strategies you're coming across out of those 6 Rs?
So all of them are common, all of them are useful. That said, many times our clients come to us with something like, hey, I've got this application, it's very critical to our success, and it's giving us a lot of grief. Can you come in and help us fix this? So when you're thinking about a single application modernization, you're really down to just 3 Rs. It's either replatforming the app, redesigning it, or rebuilding it from the ground up.
Okay, the 3 Rs. Let's walk through those 3 in a little bit more detail. How do you decide which path to take out of replatform, rebuild, or redesign?
So it's a journey, bit cliche, but look, in all seriousness, it is a journey where what's usually in mind is your destination. However, what's really important and probably taken for granted a bit is exactly where you're starting. So which way you're facing right now, what have you actually got today? And so what's really important to do very early on is a deep assessment of what you've already got. Only with a deep assessment do you know exactly what the application is made up of, and give yourself a little bit of orientation as to which way you're going to start your journey on.
Okay, as an outsider, it would make sense to me you do a deep assessment, but what does that involve? What are the technical aspects? What are you deeply assessing?
Yeah, definitely it's technical, right? So it's all about the app. It's under the bonnet. So what is actually under there? It's things like the identity platform. It's the data storage. It's where data comes from. What are the applications and services you're actually connecting into? And importantly, though, as well, some things that aren't part of the technology itself is the environment that it's got to work in the context of security, compliance, auditing, and importantly as well, don't forget the users. They're part of this. So understanding how users, how the individuals, the employees, the people are using this today, what sort of experience they've got, is really going to drive a true understanding of that current state, and therefore help you with a true plan on how to proceed.
Okay, so let's say you've done your deep assessment and you've decided on one of these 3 Rs. Let's have a look at each of them, go into a little bit more detail, starting with replatforming. Matty, give us an example of what replatforming looks like.
Yeah, sure, Adam. We've been working with Ambulance Victoria for 10 years in a very close partnership. And a few years ago, we built a solution called Reach for them. And this provides real-time access to bed occupancy and incident-specific equipment in hospitals. And that's very critical when you've got a life and death situation on your hands and you want to find the best, closest hospital. You really want to figure out which one's got the incident-specific equipment that you're after. So once COVID hit, ANZICS, which is Australian and New Zealand Intensive Care Society, they had a similar challenge in the sense that they wanted to find COVID-specific equipments, like whether it's ventilators, respirators, PPEs, ICU beds, etc., very quickly. So they had a look around and they selected Reach as the best platform. The challenge there was that Reach had been built for Ambulance Victoria and it was hosted on their on-prem data center. So we worked with Ambulance Victoria and ANZICS to replatform Reach to make it useful for this particular scenario.
Give me some more details there. So ANZICS are looking at Reach going, gee, it'd be awesome if we had that.
Yeah.
They need to bring it across to their platform. How do you actually replatform a solution in that case?
Yeah, it's very similar to what Dean was talking about before. So you need to understand where you are, you need to understand where you want to go. Luckily for us, because we had built the solution, we didn't have to do a deep assessment to see what was in there. We were maintaining the application. What we did, we worked with ANZICS to figure out what they wanted out of that final solution. And then we identified the gaps that we had in there to be able to make the relevant changes. So as part of the actual replatforming effort, we made a few changes. We had to change the underlying data structure and make a few changes to the application to allow for multi-tenancy. The idea behind this application was that it was going to be used by a lot of hospitals in Australia and New Zealand. So once you've got a lot of hospitals, you need to be very careful about who can access what. So we had to also make some changes to data access to provide federal, state, and hospital level access to the app. And then you've got the government requirements around security and compliance. And to comply with those, we also moved the application to the Canberra-based government data center. On top of all of that, we also used Azure Front Door to secure the app more, and also we used Azure Vault for secret management.
It sounds like a massive task. How did it roll out and how did it go?
So it's funny you ask that question. The whole thing from the assessment to actually roll out of the solution took us 7 days.
7 days?
7 days from the time where we started the assessment, not the replatform, the assessment, to the time where we went live with it, 7 days. And we had 191 hospitals enrolled and up and running in the solution in 2 weeks.
So from when you first look at this thinking, can we do this, to having 191 organisations using it on a new platform took 3 weeks.
That's right. And that's the power of doing replatforming right. You know where you are, and you can make really big impactful business outcomes, deliver impactful business outcomes very, very quickly.
Let's move to our next R, redesign. Dean, what are some of the considerations of a redesign?
Yeah, so redesign is fundamentally about, it's about the technology, right? And there's lots of exciting technology that's out there. But the key thing to sort of consider with redesign is that you have got something already that you're redesigning. And so trying to get the latest technology and make it work doesn't always make sense. It's very easy. Look, I work in tech. I've worked in tech for a long time. I'm a technology strategist. It's my job to understand what tech means to business, what tech means to organisations in real pragmatic outcomes. And sometimes you can really get caught up in the sexiness, the cool, shiny thing, and say, we've got the most advanced tech in here. But you really need to keep sight on what you're actually trying to achieve. And you really have got to be very pragmatic and work out what design patterns, what things actually make sense that you're getting from the new world of new tech, and fit them into what you've got.
Okay. Mehdi, give us an example of a redesign.
So I'll just pick up on where Dean left. It's so easy to get carried away on the latest shiny technology and architectural pattern. I was working at an organization before Telstra Purple as their chief technology officer. And I was actually hired by them because they had been going down this application redesign path for 2 years. And they'd gone down a really deep rabbit hole and were struggling to dig themselves back up again. We tried to turn that ship around, but it was too late by that point. A few months after I joined, the founder CEO of the organization was fired because they'd invested tens of millions of dollars of investors' money into that initiative, and they weren't seeing the return on that. So the CEO was fired, and the IT team of 25 people, including myself, we were all made redundant. And that was actually quite devastating. That's the toughest experience that I've personally had in the past 20-odd years as a professional. The other thing that was really, really difficult in all of that was that all of the effort and money and investment that had gone into that initiative, all of that was wasted. So basically, the organization scrapped all of that and dumped the redesigned application and went back to what they had 20 bit years ago, to the old application with Square One. So that's the peril of getting excited about the shiny and the new technology and the architectural styles that are out there. So when we talk and work with our clients, we really recommend that they should start with an understanding of where they want to land with the technology and where they want to land with the architecture, but have a very, very clear view of how much it's going to cost them to get there and what challenges they might face as they get there. So have that clarity, but then don't tackle it as a one-off big bang initiative. Every time you touch the code base, just redesign it a slight bit further, and then you'll get there.
Okay, well, thank you very much for sharing that very honest story, Mehdi, and it's great to see that you've landed on your feet at Telstra. Let's move on to rebuild now, Dean. Walk us through the third of these R's.
Rebuild. I love this one.
Why is that?
Well, if redesign was a renovation, a rebuild is a knockdown rebuild, right? You get to rethink the whole thing. And this is where creativity can come in. And if you really got your mind in the place of thinking about the outcome, the actual impact you can have, the possibilities for the business, then you can achieve some really, really great things. It isn't without, obviously, its challenges, right? Like if you look at what technology companies have done over time, is they've often looked at the way something is done and just digitized that. So you've just got now a digital version. You've got a tech version of that thing you already had.
Give me an example.
So I think if you look at health, for example, Mehdi with Ambulance Victoria, with Telstra Purple, you look at healthcare, people don't want the healthcare, they want the outcome, they want to be healthy. And so that's what healthcare is about. And so if you look at the way it's been done in the past, typically healthcare is a case of asking questions of the patient by a healthcare professional, the doctor, the nurse, or otherwise, and then trying to, with the answers for those questions, work out the way to treat the patient, the best possible way for the best, hopefully they'll be better, right? And so what tech did was we came along and we said, okay, yep, you've got your sheet of paper with questions that you ask and that you write down, and we're going to give you a PC to put that in. We're going to give you a tablet, right? And that's, that helped tech. It helped the organisation's business. The data's in there quicker. We don't have to deal with handwriting we can't understand and things like that. But if you look at it from the perspective of the customer outcome or the patient outcome, then if anything, there's an extra tool there. There's an extra piece of technology between the professional and the patient.
You've lost a degree of the human connection, in fact.
But absolutely, absolutely. So, if you look at that today and say, look, we've got new technology, let's start this process again and rebuild from the ground up. What could technology enable for that health experience, for that patient's experience, focused on helping them recover or otherwise.
You're the tech expert. How could tech, in that case, enhance or maintain the human contact?
Well, think about it. If I was being looked after, I would like to basically get the treatment as quick as possible. I'd like to see not the technology in the way and people trying to service that. And so it could be just a case of having that discussion naturally between the healthcare professional and the patient. Let's check your pulse. What's your temperature right now? How have you been feeling? How were you sleeping last night? And with the tech we've got today, we've got artificial intelligence type technologies, voice to text, language understanding, personalisation, and all this data we can tap into. Just imagine if that was automatically picked up just from the conversation and then feedback given in real time back to the professional to say, this is interesting, maybe ask this question next. Maybe treat the patient this way. And so suddenly you've got very, very intimate interactions between the professional and the patient. And who doesn't want that, right?
You've got the humans doing the human stuff, but doing it even better because they're being empowered by smart machines using cloud and cutting edge technology.
Human interaction couldn't be better through technology.
I love that. I love what you're saying about tech being an enabler of human interaction. Okay, let's have a look at some success stories. Give me an example, Mehdi, of a rebuild that you've been involved in that delivered success and return for customers.
Yeah, sure, Adam. Kangaroo Bus Lines comes to mind.
Kangaroo Bus Lines, tell us about
Kangaroo
it.
Bus Lines. They are a family-owned and operated business in Southeast Queensland, and they provide transport solutions and services to education and tourism and a few other sectors. The challenge that they had a few years ago was that underlying their core operation was this single app, which was old and dated, and it was getting very slow and unreliable. So they worked with a consulting firm for 18 months to rebuild a solution, and they weren't seeing the outcome and the result that they wanted. And that's when they reached out to us. We went in, Dean's point before, we had an assessment of the old application that they had an assessment of the application that the consulting firm had built for them. And we also worked with the end users and the operational managers to figure out how they were using the application and how they were interacting and doing their job. We then ran a few discovery sessions with them to see, all right, so this is your life now. What are your motivations? How do you want to operate in 2 years from now? What would an ideal end state look like? So we put the user and we put the outcome in the center and built the technology on top of that. We didn't start with the technology. We didn't start with the cool and shiny new thing. We started with what they wanted and what would deliver the outcome that they were after. And we delivered on top of that. And that allowed us to deliver the solution ahead of the schedule and on the budget.
The interesting thing about that too is I mean no disrespect to Kangaroo Bus Lines, but they don't sound to me like a big four bank or a gigantic international consultancy. This sounds like a smallish size business at a reasonably remote location, and you're bringing about real transformation and real benefit and change for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And this has allowed them to operate at pace and be a lot more innovative in how they deliver the solutions to their clients.
Excellent stuff. We've got time to take some questions now. Hit us up on the app. Go to the Live Now button. Send through some questions for Dean and Mehdi. Got a bit of time for these questions here, guys. The first one, how do I know when it's time to start application modernisation? If people haven't thought about this before, how do they know that their business is ready, that this is the time?
I'll give that one a shot. Look, I think you've got to look at the experience of the customers, the experience of the employees. So if there's an app, if we just think about that app that people interact through, how are they being engaged today? Is there a friction in there? And are you maximising the time that you have on the application? And so you can easily look at that and say maybe these applications are things that could be further personalised for a better experience.
Where do I start?
I might take a stab on that. I guess it depends on what you're trying to accomplish, Adam. If it's a part of a whole of business transformation, then you really, ideally, You know where you're headed in your business. You know what your business is going to look like in 3 to 5 years from now. You know what processes are going to be there to support your business and how your people are going to interact with these processes and with each other. What sort of technology is needed to enable that. So that's the future state. Hopefully you know that. But then you start with today. What sort of applications you have today? How are your people using these applications? How are these applications integrating and interacting with each other? Once you know where you want to head and you know where you are, then you'll create a roadmap for modernization.
What does my team need to look like to best engage with the concept of app modernisation?
It's about you're talking stakeholders. So it's not just all the technology. Yes, there's technology advisors in there, people who know technology and how it's been applied in the past and how it's applied in different industries, but there needs to be stakeholders from the organisation as well. So there needs to be someone who understands, where this application fits in the business from the perspective of the business. So if you think of the other employees as customer stakeholders in the outcome, then you will have the people who are going to be using the application. You're going to have people from the operations side of the business and potentially even some sort of executive sponsorship. But then, of course, yes, you then have the technical sort of professionals as well, which may include sort of security, architecture experts, and people who can really think differently as well.
Okay, this might be one for you, Dean. Why should I partner with you in this partnership that you've had with Telstra Purple? Why has it worked? What's been the strength of it?
So I think I'll give, I suppose, my personal experience with Telstra Purple. Look, I've known the folks at Telstra Purple for many, many years, and many years is an eternity in tech, and the team has always been about the customer. And if you look at tech, there's so much out there. It's very easy to either be a specialist or a jack of all trades, master of none. But what I've really seen with the Telstra Purple team is that they have so much specialisation across a heck of a lot of breadth. And when you're looking at application modernisation in particular, you never really know what piece of technology is the right peg for that hole, right? That right thing to fill the gap. And you don't, if you work sometimes with very, very specialised narrow focus, then it is a case of sometimes just a bigger hammer. If every problem seems like a nail to that organisation. So look, my experience has definitely been, it's been that centricity around the customer, around the organisation and the outcomes, having great business outcomes, but also having a massive breadth of technology, full stack.
A question for both of you, and I asked this in a different panel earlier today on securing workloads, but where do you really need the buy-in in the organisation for it to go on this journey? Now, in the perfect world, as I said earlier with security as well, everyone from the CEO to the person who's opening the door and welcoming people are all on the journey and all think it's important. But really, where does that sort of momentum have to come from to convince an organisation it's time to make this change? Whether it's a big organisation, a large financial, all the way through to one of those smaller like the Kangaroo Bus Lines, where's the sweet spot of where you need that commitment or where you need to sell within the organisation, this is the path we need to go? Because I presume it's scary for some people to go down a path to commit to fundamentally changing something they've done this way for so long. I'd love both your observations on that.
Yeah, I might have a start on that. I guess if you start at the the worker level, people, the employees of the organization, what might happen is that if they don't have the executive sponsorship, they might try really hard to make change happen, but it won't happen without that sponsorship. If you start at the top of the scale with executive sponsorship, but people within the organization don't really want to change, the culture pushes back on that change. So instead of kind of going horizontal slices of the organization, picking the employees or picking the execs, what we tend to see succeed in with our clients is that we pick a vertical slice. We pick a function within the organization and say, let's make a change happen within this slice of the organization with executive sponsorship all the way to the employees that would be impacted by that change.
I've actually had a couple more coming in as quickly. Instead, Mark asks, what about the integration of more than one application in my business? Do I modernise all at once or do I take it one app at a time?
Yeah, so that's it's the big elephant question, really, isn't it? And I think most people sort of know, it's one bite at a time. That being said, you need to get them all into a place where they're all receptive to work together, right? And so I think when people talk about moving to the cloud, quite often those initial steps, when we go reflect on the 6 Rs, sometimes that rehosting is a safe and fairly, for most part, risk-free sort of first step to bring a lot of applications along. But get your priorities straight as well, right? Like work out which applications are the ones that are most important. If you've got lots of applications interacting and integrating with one another, then you've really got to work out which ones are going to break which. So, and this comes back to that assessment stuff, right? Like if you're going, with application modernisation, we're sort of focusing on one thing often, but there is the broad, eventually you're going to get the rest of the elephant. And so maybe there is a broad assessment as well that needs to be done, maybe around the function within the business a little bit, like what Mehdi just mentioned, around pick those areas.
Excellent. I've got one question here we don't have time to get to. Assessment sounds like an important part. How do I go about organising one? You click on the Give Us a Call button here on the platform. We ring you and organise one of those for you. Let's wrap it up. What's your final takeaways? Dean, your final takeaway for the audience on this topic.
Wow. It's an exciting time. Look, application modernisation is about making organisations actually more responsive to change, more receptive to opportunities that they can take them. And importantly, making sure that when the next COVID hits, they're not only prepared for it, they're actually ready to outcompete any of those who aren't really prepared for it. And so, look, it's a great opportunity. It actually presents the IT department, the tech department, which is fundamental in most business operations, as a real stakeholder in the overall business transformation. And so, with that, it's exciting times to be a technologist, I think. There's great technology out there, and it's all about opportunity.
Mehdi, what's your takeaway?
Yeah, if I could leave the audience with one final piece of advice, is that be very clear about what you're trying to accomplish with your application modernization initiative, and then keep it very, very simple. We work with a lot of clients on their application modernization journey, and it's not their day job, so I appreciate why they might complicate things. But we see a lot of challenges where people think that they're starting with a replatforming initiative, and then 6 months later, they haven't delivered much.
Keep
the same.
it simple.
Be very clear about what you're trying to accomplish, and keep it simple.
Fantastic, impactful last words. Thank you so much for joining me today, Mehdi and Dean. This has been a fascinating session. Everyone who's dialing in, for your engagement and your questions, thank you very much. Please rate the session out of 5. Head to the left toolbar and request a call from us today. If you want to speak to these experts in this field about today or anything else we've covered in Realise Cloud, hit us up for a call. And there'll be more Realise Cloud in just a few moments.